Welcome to the Gay Men Going Deeper, a podcast series by the GMB where we talk about personal development, mental health, and sexuality. We are your hosts. Matt Lansdale is an intuitive life and spiritual coach and counselor specializing in healing and empowerment. We have Michael Delorean. He is a life and wellness coach specializing in sexuality, relationships, and self-confidence. And I am Reno Johnston, a life coach, business consultant, and the director of marketing for the Body Electric School. We each have our own coaching practice, but in this podcast, we're sharing all of our best stuff. And today, we're talking about aging. And we're going to be exploring questions like, what has been your relationship to aging? What do you like/dislike about aging? Where do you imagine your ideas, beliefs about aging come from? We'll continue these discussions on the last Thursday of every month in the Gay Men's Brotherhood Zoom Hangout, where you'll have a chance to share your own experiences. This podcast and YouTube channel are listener and viewer supported. If you enjoy what we're creating, you can support us by making a donation to the show using the link in the show notes. You can also subscribe to the early access option on an Apple podcast, listen ad-free, gain early access to episodes. All your support helps us to continue making content for you and supporting our community. We thank you in advance. Also, if you're looking to accelerate your personal development journey, check out our new coaching collection. Learn how to heal and empower yourself at your own pace by getting instant access to 45 plus premium personal development coaching videos created by us, as well as our Healing Your Shame and Building Better Relationships courses. Head to gaymengoingdeeper.com for more info. Now we'll dive into the topic. With the way youthfulness and maturation and aging are portrayed in popular culture and media, the many plastic surgery and filler-clad folk plastered all over television, magazines, and advertisements, and filters designed to make you appear poreless, wrinkleless, and flawless, so to speak, it's no wonder our views of aging are skewed. No pun intended, the way we see ourselves is literally skewed, filtered to shit, if I may. When I was in my early 20s, a gentleman had said to me that when you turn 25 in the gay community, you're dead. I can remember choosing not to take that on and wondering why that was so. And I'm thrilled we get to discuss and explore this topic together and the answer to this question together today. So we'll dive in with the first question, which is what has been your relationship to aging? I suppose I'll start us off. So I remember being young, and to be honest, I couldn't wait to be older. I could not wait to be in my 30s, my 40s, even my 50s, because what I observed around me were these like confident, sexy, stylish, wise, unabashed, like shameless people, and they knew so much and they exuded so much like confidence. Just the way they moved through the world was really inspiring to me. And I constantly found myself wanting to be in proximity to people who were older than me. I hung out with kids my age and I really had fun doing that. But oftentimes, if there was an opportunity to be in a room that adults were in, I would try to be in that room, and I would often shoot away as well. You know too much for your own good. You're too young. Go play. I'm like, but I want to listen. And then as time went on, that continued. I continued to want to be in the company of older people, but I would say the first time that I was kind of that was brought to question was when I was in my early 20s. So I'd come out at 19, and there was this guy I was friends with, and he said to me, and to this day he is slightly jaded, I would say. There's a vibe about him. Love him. And also there's this sort of jadedness about him that I experience. And he said to me, enjoy it while you're young, because when you're 25, you're done, you know. Um, he said 25 in gay years is like 50 in hetero years, or something like that. I don't know, something absurd like that. And I just remember thinking, well, no, I don't agree with that. It just didn't. I was like, no, I'm not going to take that on. And around that time, I had actually coincidentally been watching, like, I can remember Jane Fonda being interviewed, and I can remember reading this book by Raquel Welch called Beyond the Cleavage, and seeing Goldie Hawn in interviews, like all these amazing women who had aged beautifully. And what I mean when I say that isn't so much their physical appearance, it's more um, like what they embodied and how they related to aging and the ways in which they embraced it. And I just found that to be so inspiring. And I always found older men attractive. So for me, like, I felt in a lot of ways, I felt less afraid of aging. Mm, I would say the only thing that I occasionally experienced fear um, around was whether or not I would be desirable as I continued to age. I think that was the big one, was, will men still desire me um, once I'm of a certain age? And I'm still, I wouldn't say I've completely reconciled with that, but it's not a major concern for me, and I like what I'm seeing as I'm maturing. Like, I like how I'm maturing. I like the way I look. I like the way I'm maturing internally in terms of how I see the world and how I think and how I navigate through the world. So I would say right now, for all intents and purposes, I'm enjoying aging. Um, and I feel blessed in that regard, because had I taken on everything that was being, like, sort of, flung at me, my gosh, I think I'd lose my mind, So that's me.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm curious about your answer to that question, Matt or Michael.
I think it's hilarious, Reno, that you heard that gay death thing at 25.
Yeah.
Like, that is the earliest that I've heard. 30, I've heard 40, I've heard that. I mean, we've heard that, but 25, come the fuck on.
Yeah, like you haven't even entered your prime
Right.
at 25.
Yeah.
Like, crazy.
I'd say it's gay birth,
Yeah.
not gay
Yeah.
death. Yeah, that's definitely one of those, common tropes in our community, this sense of gay death. And I'm so happy that you made voice that you could just, like, not take
Yeah.
that on. Like, it's just a choice. I choose not to believe that. Like, unsubscribe. Not going to believe that one. So yeah, my relationship with aging. This is very relevant for me now, like this year. This is my 40th year. And so I would say for the first 38 years of my life, I didn't really think too much about aging. It was something my parents did. It was something my grandparents did. It was really not really a big part of my life. I was just kind of focused on having fun, being me, and doing what I want to do. But then I think, I think it was COVID as well. I was like, okay, well, I'm approaching this 40 number, and it started dawning on me, like, okay, what do I want? What kind of 40-year-old gay man do I want to be? Do I want to be like, the ones over here who are deathly afraid of aging and thinking it's gay death, and, clinging on to their youth very desperately? Or do I want to embrace it and say, this is who I am, take it or leave it? Or something in the middle? Or, what does that look like? I still love the scene. I still love to party. So that is very much authentically part of who I am. And I don't want to give that up. I don't think I should. I think that that's who I am, and that's what I want to be. So I think for me, it's really been lately defining that. So I don't have an answer for you about what that is for me today. I will say this, though. I will say that it's a fun process, and it kind of goes back to that. We did an episode called Reinvention at the beginning of the year. And I like to think of aging going through those same questions that we talked about in reinvention in the same way. Who do I want to become? What are my values? What do I want to live into? And like really intentionally focusing your future self into the now and saying, hey, am I taking the steps to become that man that I want to be? And doing so, this is the trick, doing so without thinking who should I be? It's who do I want to be, not who should I be. So for me, some of those questions are, who do I want to be when I'm 50? What's 50-year-old Michael? What's 60-year-old Michael? What's 70-year-old Michael? What is my legacy? Without kids of my own, which I don't plan on having, what does my life look like? What the hell am I going to be doing with my life? My whole life, I've had a very strong sense of family. And that has tied into my concept of aging, which we'll get to later. But I'm going to be like the only one in my family who really doesn't have kids. So I'm like, I don't even know what do people do. If I'm not going to be a dad, what am I going to do? So all these are the kinds of questions that I'm going through. And I don't have the answers for them. I'm still figuring that shit out. And I think it's scary, but also fun in this at the same time. What I will say is this, when it comes to aging, when I stopped using sex to fuel my self-worth, my fear of aging and my worry about it, I would say melted away, but it certainly diminished significantly. Because for a long time, I saw my viability in the gay community as a sexual object of desire, as my desirability, physically speaking. So of course, our bodies aged, nothing around that. But once I started to kind of get my sense of validation, not solely from that external validation, but more from that internal, like we've talked about in previous episodes. Once I started to develop that sense, then my fear of aging really started to reduce a little bit. Not to say that it's gone, it's definitely not. I certainly am very much clinging to the idea of my body the way it used to be, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? And I know that in 10 years, I'll be looking at my 40-year-old body thinking the same thing. So I don't think that really goes away, but it's not as scary of a thing as it used to be. So yeah, I don't know if that's an answer to your question. I think I'm still going through it. So hopefully this episode will kind of inspire me as well. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Okay, I want to say off the top because maybe I'll just talk about it, what's going on in my experience. I'm like kind of, I see a lot of mature men in our community getting really agitated by younger men talking about the aging process. And I feel like in my experience right now, there's this like, I've internalized maybe some of that. So I want to just bring voice to this from like a more conscious perspective, because everybody's journey and where they're at on their journey is relative to them. So if you're a mature man and you're watching this and you're really triggered by, 3 guys in their 30s, late 30s, talking about aging, I really want you to question that, like, we're at our own spot in the aging process, right? And when we compare ourselves to other people, it can lead us down a rabbit hole, but it can be really invalidating, because I've talked about this in some men's groups that I've had, and I've been met with, oh, like, that's nothing, you just wait until you get to my age, or these types of things. And I get that. I totally get that, but it can be very invalidating to minimize somebody's experience about where they're at. So I have my own relationship to aging, and so do other people. So I wanted just to say that off the top, because I know there's going to be probably a little bit of backlash of 3 guys in their late 30s talking about aging. Like, who are we to talk about aging? But we're on the spectrum too. We're just at a different spot, right? So I wanted to say that. I'll second what you said, Michael, but it wasn't so much about sex. It was more so about my appearance and my body. I did a lot of deep work around this. I've talked about this in several episodes about going to Asia and turning off the taps of external validation, not posting pictures. I stopped working out. That was my healing, me healing my relationship to what was getting in the way of me aging gracefully, because I had such a strong attachment to my body and my look, and I wasn't getting worthiness or value of who I was from inside me, from my character, my energy, these sorts of things. And then I was noticing that my relationship to aging was almost like injured, or there was like some sort of hang up that I had. So that was a really important part of my journey. And I'm not saying that I've healed this, because I do think aging is part of life. It's something we all face. We can't heal it because we're always meeting it. How can you heal something that you have not met yet, right? And I think when aging for me is like a grieving, we're grieving the loss of everything that we once had. It could be our body, it could be memories, it could be relationships. Like, as we age, things change, right? So I think part of aging gracefully is being okay with change and making peace with change. And like you said, I love how you related it to reinventing yourself, because as we reinvent ourselves, we're constantly letting go of the old and bringing in the new. And I think that's really beautiful. But where I still struggle would be, and I noticed this on that same weekend that I went out for hockey, and I went to this hockey party, and there was like every gay in Calgary was there. And I'm 37 now, so like there's a whole new flock of 18 to 25, 25 to 30, like that. There's a whole new flock of people. I don't even know who they are. And a lot of these young guys are really buying into the ideologies that I bought into when I was younger. It's like, go to the gym 7 days a week, get ripped, and they all were perky. You know what I mean? And I was like, just kind of like internalizing this, and I was like, oh, like, is my ass still perky? And like, really, this old story came in, and it was really interesting to watch this. And there was a bit of envy, I guess, would be probably the emotion I was experiencing. And for me, that envy made me compare. Well, it came out of comparison, right? So I do think that the relationship we have with aging is going to be highly correlated with how much we compare ourselves to other people. So I wanted to bring voice to that. What else did I have here? Okay, so then the last part that I have is, I've been noticing, I'm single right now, and there's a desire for me to be in a partnership, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. And I've been doing a lot of deep healing work in the last, few years, but more so in the last 6 months. It's been really heavy, and I haven't been ready for dating, and I've almost been kind of blocked from being able to date. I think the universe is protecting me, but I tell this story once in a while of like, I'm passing my prime, and I'm gonna meet my partner when I'm like not in my prime, and he's not gonna get to meet my body when it's in its prime. And there's this grief around this that but what I'm noticing is that's the old me again creeping in, attachment to my body, and like that my body is the thing that I always have to lead with. But I'm learning how to like redirect that, and like to focus on all the aspects of who I am, you know what I mean? And if I look at what aging has taught me, it's taught me how to have intimacy. It's taught me how to show up and be vulnerable. It's taught me like all the wisdom that I have came from the aging process. So that's now what I have to offer somebody. And I really do think that my most conscious partnership or partnerships, I don't even know what I want right now. So whatever I end up moving towards, they're going to get that. And they're also going to get my body. My body's amazing. You know what I mean? But I do put a lot of, when I do compare, I'm like, oh, my body's, I can feel like my body's not good. But when I don't compare, I actually really love my body, and I think my body's amazing. So, yeah, this is like a really tricky area. I work with a lot of mature gay males, and this is a big one. It's a big one that I come up against in my coaching, and it requires like a deep connection to consciousness, right? To the deeper part of who we are, right? Connecting with our emotional body, our energetic body, our etheric body, like all of these things. We need to connect with that if we want to actually reconcile our relationship with the negative sides of aging. So, but I'll talk more about that as we progress here.
Thanks, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful, both of you, and I really appreciate your acknowledgement of I guess what I would call like the nuance of this conversation and this journey of aging.
Mm-hmm.
It really is that. So what do you like / dislike about aging? I can start. Um, and for those of you who are listening and who aren't watching on video, I'm wearing a toque right now, and I'm going to take this toque off. And there's this little spot on top of my head right here where the hair is particularly sparse.
Yeah.
I would say that, and like you can see my hairline, it's starting to recede here a little bit.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I don't like about aging. There's another one. There's so my neck right here, there's like these lines, and like they're starting to like deepen, and and I'm sure they'll continue to do so. Like that, these are things that I struggle with, when it comes to aging. It's like little things like that. My knees, they're still pretty strong. Like I can drop it low. People are like, wow, your knees, but I can feel it. I'm like, well, they're not as spry as they once were. Um, yeah, it's like it's little things like that where I'm like, man, okay, this is happening. Like I'm getting older, and and I'm reflective on that. And so I would say it's not that I don't like those things, it's that they're areas and points of challenge, of discomfort, of growth, even, having to. I love that you said grief earlier, Matt, that letting go of what was. It's like there used to be hair here, and now there's less, and soon there might be none, and oh my gosh. um what I like about aging, though, oh my gosh, um I, to be honest, I feel like I'm gonna toot my own horn and say I feel like a fine wine. Like I just get better with time. It's like I feel wiser, and I feel like I love myself more, and I feel like I move through the world with more sort of grace and authenticity and less shame. I find that I impact the people around me in even more powerful ways as well, just through my being. There's a wisdom there that I really love, and I've become increasingly accepting of everything that's going on here, and here is in, within my space, but also like on earth in general. Increasingly there's an acceptance that I experience of what's happening here, and that allows me to move through the world with more ease and grace. So my being has developed, and I think that's one of the things I really love. And then lastly, like, and there's probably more things I could say, but the experiences I've had, my gosh, like I get to look back on my life, and it's like, wow, what a life I've lived, and I'm just warming up. So that's really exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
I love those. I was just thinking about something while you were both speaking, and this answers the question, I think, for me too. The things that I dislike are all in the category of like the physical, like as I identify with my physical body identity, right? But the things that I like are all the other things, the spiritual, the mental, psychological, emotional things like you talked about right now. You said confidence, you said authenticity, you said the way you move, the gracefulness. All of these things are mental or emotional or spiritual, right? So I would say that would be, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And that would be the same for me. So the dislikes, yeah, my body does not do the things it used to do as well, as quickly, as gracefully. Lower energy, recovery time, all that stuff. So there's nothing new there, but I think I'd rather talk about the things that I am enjoying about aging, and that I hope to continue enjoying, which is the confidence piece. Like every year, literally every year, I'm like, okay, no, this is the most confident I've ever been. And then the next year, I'm like, no, Michael, no, this is the most confident I've ever been. And it shows, it's not just saying that, because it shows in the actions I take in the world. I am showing up more and more and louder and bigger every fucking year because I have something to say, and I give less of a shit about upsetting the general they of the world. And that to me is really important. It's very much something that I value for my own life, my contribution to the world, right? So that to me is one of the things I love. And I'm like, if I'm only 40, and I'm going to say only, if I'm only 40, like what am I going to end up when I'm like 80? Am I going to be like some kind of, I don't have no idea what I'm going to be like, but I imagine myself a very curmudgeon-y old man who has an opinion about everything. But yeah, I like to say that the good things about getting older are I used to be such a people pleaser, and that each year just dies more and more. It's still there, of course, but it dies more and more, and that's nice. Also, there's things like financial stability. That's always great. I used to worry a lot more about money when I was young. I don't worry about that anymore as much. Um, it's that genuine self-confidence and this coming into my own. And I think something that's important to me is contribution. So, you had said the word impact, which I really like. Part of what makes me tick and what motivates me is contributing and a sense of contribution to the world, specifically the gay community. It's what we're doing here with the podcast, what we're doing with the Brotherhood, what I'm doing with my own company, right? And so as I get older, I get clearer in that contribution, and then I'm taking more actions towards that and getting less caught up in my mind. So those are some of the likes and dislikes. Of course, I don't love the way I have the extra weight around my gut. And of course, I don't love that my butt used to be like super up here and tight and nice and bubbly. Now it's got a bit more flab to it. Although some people like the flab, that's fine. You're welcome to my house. But yeah, and like all those things are I think to be said, like to be expected, but I think it's okay to grieve it. Like, I don't feel bad that I look at my, naked selfies from 5 years ago and be like, shit, I can count my abs, like how beautiful they were. And like the perfect little, what they call them, cum gutters. Like,
Gutters.
they were so
Otherwise
beautiful.
known as obliques.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I don't know the actual term. Yes,
Yes.
Hilarious.
My cum gutters. It's where the cum.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, I missed that, and I think that's okay. I'm like, I'm allowed to miss that. Matt kind of gave me permission by saying it's grieving, and I like that. I'm like, I'm allowed to grieve for my, 30-year-old body or 20-year-old body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. That was so good. Okay, I'll start with what I don't like. So this whole notion of deterioration, right? We're always moving one step closer to death, and that obviously occurs through deterioration. Our cells stop dividing as much, and blah blah blah. We stop producing as much hair. Like all these things occur. Our bone density decreases. So that kind of scares me a little bit, or maybe is it fear? It's kind of like just the feeling of where it's like a pain in the ass, because it's like I heal slower. That's probably my biggest frustration of aging, healing slower, the aches and pains. I used to be able to go out and party all weekend, drink, maybe do drugs, and I'd be spry on Monday morning. And now I don't drink or do drugs, but it's yeah, I don't know, there's that element of it, but I think it's also there's a silver lining to that too, because I now know my body, and I rest, and I treat my body with a lot of respect, and I really do value my body as a temple now. So that's the one thing. And then it's oftentimes I'll transition into what I like about aging, and I think this will shock some people, because I actually like wrinkles. I think wrinkles are a really interesting thing, and I do believe that wrinkles are almost like the map of our life. You know what I mean? Like they really embody a lot of energy, a lot of emotion. And when I work with people, I have the ability to be able to track people's bodies and their facial expressions, and then I can feel the emotions that are in these parts of their body. It's like really fascinating. It's part of having the high empathy, and I can read almost like wrinkles. I can read people's wrinkles. It's like their experiences are lying in their wrinkles. And it's really cool, because whenever I see like a distinguished, mature man and he smiles, and like all the wrinkles are exactly as he would smile, it like something, I don't know, it just, my mirror neurons fire, and I smile when they smile. So wrinkles are just full of so much life, in my opinion. And I think they're wrinkles are really interesting because I think I hold a very minority view on wrinkling, and people will chase Botox and fillers and all these things. And for me, that is such a disconnect when people do that, because my mirror neurons don't fire, because they're like, their face is rigid and it's not moving. The muscles in their face are literally been Botox, which like basically paralyzes the muscle, right? So the expression is gone, and the life feels like it's gone out of when I see that with people. And I see a lot of women, and they're all starting to look the same with this like really rigid face structure, you know, and it's just so odd for me to see this. So celebrate wrinkling. It's beautiful, you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting crow's feet, and but it's my smiley eyes. Like, that's what makes me me, you know what I mean? So I will not put any of that stuff in my body, because I want to naturally just kind of watch my skin and my face do what it does as I get older. And then one of the bigger things, I agree with you, Michael, on the confidence thing. I think I'm still coming into my own. Like, I've been a very late bloomer most of my life. Like, most of my peers had pubic hair and armpit hair and facial hair, and I didn't. And, you know, I've always been a late bloomer. And I think I'm now coming into my own in a deeper way around confidence. So this is something really special that I'm going through in my life right now. But what I would say is wisdom. Like, all of my life experiences, like, I have the depth of character in who I am because of my life experiences and the things that I've gone through. So I really value that, and I think that's probably one of my greatest assets is you know, I live and then I teach what I've lived. That's kind of what I've done my whole life for my career. And without those experiences, I would not be able to do what I do, and I would not be able to relate to people in the way that I do. So I think that's really powerful. So it's like this idea of finding myself and then knowing myself. And right now I'm at a place in my life where I really feel like I know myself quite well. And the one area that I'm really, really happy about right now in my life is the area of relationships. I've done a ton of work in this space, and this is where I had so many injuries in my life because of a lot of attachment trauma and fear around relationships. And I had a disorganized attachment style my whole life, basically. And I've developed a lot of security around my attachment now, and it just feels so good. It feels so good to be able to relate to people and not be and to just stay in my own lane. You know what I mean? I'm doing that like tremendously right now. Like, I'm just relating with a lot of cool people, like, you know, and it just I always come back home to me, you know, and it feels really good. And I wouldn't be able to have, you know, said that right now if it wasn't for aging and, you know, my mind and my spirit aging along with my body as well. So yeah.
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, please.
Based on what Matt just said. So I was out at where was I? I was out somewhere in Toronto, and someone came up to me and it's like, "Oh, you're Michael from Gay Men Going Deeper." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I watch your videos on YouTube. You guys do great." Blah blah blah. And we were drinking, and he said very concisely, "You look a lot older than I thought." in a nice way. I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, but he said it in a nice way, so I'm like, that sounds like a compliment. He's like, "Yes, you're much more beautiful." And I'm like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know, you got some, like Matt was saying, you got those some wrinkles." And I never saw those on when I watched the videos, but you're more beautiful. You have a beautiful energy.
Oh.
And I thought, well, isn't that just it? Like, how nice that was that he could say that. And I mean, I thanked him for his honesty, but at first I was like, oh, like that sounds like a bad thing. But then to say that it's the energy, which I love, I think I've said that before, that I love that compliment of like, you have a beautiful energy. That to me means more than you have a pretty face or a nice body.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe he was kind of picking up on what you were saying, Matt, about how, you know, the life experience someone has kind of sticks with them in their aura or in their energy, and that really does have an impact on people perceive you. So yes, people, I do have wrinkles. Maybe you can't see it because of Zoom, but they're there.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, like, I don't, you know, I with regard to the Botox and filler topic, right? It's like, I don't want to assume anything, but my sense is that it's not about judgment or shame around, you know, what we choose to do with our bodies or how we choose to navigate the aging process.
Mm-hmm.
It's you know, it's what makes sense for you.
Yeah.
And and also, as we've discussed in previous podcasts, I think there's something to this whole notion of awareness and really reflecting on like why we do the things we do. You know, why does it occur to us to get fillers? Why does it not? You know, and things like that. What and ultimately that initial question, you know, what is your relationship to aging, right? And like how would you like it to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where where do you imagine your ideas and your beliefs about aging come from? And I'm actually going to shoot this question straight to you, Matt.
Straight to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, interesting. um, well, it's interesting when you were like, I had this visual when you were just talking, and it was like, we're going this direction. This is aging. And then when we start to do all these things, we see ourselves aging in the mirror and we get that reflection. We start to try and go backwards, right? We chase youth. And that's a dissonance. That's an inner conflict that we have, because you can't actually fight that process. You can try, and eventually it'll just get to the point where you'll have to just surrender. And I think that was why I did this work on myself, detaching from obsession with my body and using it as my primary source of value, is because I didn't want to get to the point where that currency is completely gone and I'm left in having to deal with all that unworthiness, right? Like I wanted to do that work. So now I don't use that as my source. But I still have what I perceive as youthfulness, right? But yeah, we're really, you know, what I'm thinking here is like there's two ways to view this. You have like that egoic kind of mind-centered approach to viewing that, which is going to always look at it like through like a scarcity mindset, like I only have enough youth, right? And we have to like try and preserve it, or we have to bring it back or whatever. And then we have this soul-centered energy, which is like I almost kind of, my soul like feels like it's laughing right now at the futility of the ego, and like oh my god, we have so many past lives, we have so many lives ahead of us, we have all this infinite beautiful energy. The soul is just like, yeah, like it's like it's humorous to the soul, because the soul's like, you don't even know nothing right? Like on how magical this life can be if you just let go of over identifying with the stories that you've told about X, Y, and Z, right? And that's really the work that I'm doing. That's why I'm a spiritual warrior, right? Because I want more attachment to what actually matters in life for me, right? For me, I speak very, very specifically for me, because I don't want to live a life where I'm obsessed with youth, or I'm chasing trends, or I'm getting plastic surgeries. I don't want that. I want to be content and happy with me. I want to be happy in my skin, and I get to define what that is for me. And if and there is no shame at all or judgment to people that do that and get plastic surgeries or Botox, is because I'm a firm believer that we are all on a path towards happiness, and whatever brings you happiness, I think, go for it. You know what I mean? Whatever makes you feel good, go for it. But for me, that would not make me feel good. It would reinforce the ego. And I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to actually let my ego shed attachments to things like youth, obsession with youth. So some of the things I see in our culture, and believe it or not, I'm going to kind of nag on women here a bit, because women are, they really put a lot of emphasis on appearance, and I think there is pressure for them to do that coming from probably men. And we have bought into that, right? So if you look at the way heterosexual men operate, usually, this is obviously stereotypical, is they're not super concerned about their appearance or youth, right? There's this whole notion that they become distinguished and salt and peppery, and they get more attractive as they get older. So there's not that really harsh energy. Women, they have the same conditioning that we have. Actually, I should say we have the same conditioning that they have, because I think it comes from that, where they start to lose their stock, starts to plummet at 30, and blah, 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 it goes down and down and down. That's the conditioning they're buying into, though, right? Every single human being on this planet has the ability to unsubscribe, like Michael said. Like, no, I'm not buying into that bullshit. I don't want to buy into that. I'm going to buy into the ideology that I'm a fine wine, like you said, Reno. Like as I get older, I get tastier and yummier and juicier, right? So I think that's really important to talk about. And I think there's this this obsession in our world with youth, and it manifests in all these little ways. One of the ways that I kind of see it happening, and we all reinforce each other, is through like self-deprecating around age. And we do it with a humorous energy, but there's a lot of truth to it, right? And I think that reinforces that as the story that we tell ourselves. So it's like, I'm trying to think of little ways that people self-deprecate. It's like, I don't know. Can you guys think of any ways that people self-deprecate around age? Like, one could be like, oh, I'm 29 and holding, like, when really they're turning 40 or whatever. Like
Forever 21. That's what I
forever
say
21.
sometimes.
Like,
yeah.
no,
Or
but
I'll
there is,
say I'm an old ass bitch. Sometimes I'll say that too.
yeah. So I do see this a lot with people, and I think that there's truth to it, right? When we self-deprecate, there's always truth, and it is self-injury. We don't think about it like that, but it really is when we self-deprecate. So I would say, if you're wanting to check that and develop a stronger relationship with the aging process in a healthy way, like check all these little things you're doing, and start to move towards like consciousness and connection to you, the actual you, right? Like the soul energy of who you are. And I think that happens through presence. So, I don't have all the answers for this when I'm doing coaching or counseling with people around this. But one of the things that I will always say is get present, connect to your body, focus on the energy of who you are and less the stories of who you are. And I think that's always what I'm moving people towards, because the aging process, when we get present, we pull ourselves out of the linear ideology around time. Like we're aging and we're moving on time, past and future, like this whole notion. When we're present, we're literally just present. We're not attaching to time. So if we're not attaching to time, we're not attaching to the negative views around aging. So presence, I think, is the answer. If I were to say follow something, move towards presence, and you'll probably develop a stronger relationship to healthy aging. Yeah.
I think
for hearing me.
yeah, no, that's good. Going back to that, the piece about what you're attaching your self-worth to, right? That really, for me, has been where I started to have that shift, right? When I stopped purely or primarily identifying with myself as my body, and not just my body, but my body image, the way my body looked and the way it was perceived by others.
Totally.
That is when really it was like, okay, well, as that kind of healed, then that relationship to aging started to improve as well. And I think you're right. I think the same could be said for straight women and even some straight men as well. It's not, I think it's just part of our culture. We have a culture that really values youth here in North America, which is a great segue into the answer to this question. My heritage, I was born in Canada, but my heritage is Italian. And the Italian culture is very much known to revere their elderly. And so luckily, fortunately for me, the first ideas and beliefs that I had about aging came from my grandparents. I saw them age, and now I see my parents aging. And I'm very thankful for that, because they taught me not only, respect your elders and all that stuff, but to see it as a beautiful thing, even though their bodies deteriorated, and that part was never beautiful, and they would agree. They always complained about that they couldn't do the things they used to do, and they needed help with this. And then that's where I came in as their grandchild, right? And I was happy to do it. But what I learned was that it is sad, and it is a loss, and it is something to grieve, the deterioration of the physical body. And even for me, my parents are actually here now. But as I imagine them, like my mom and my dad now, right? They're in their late 60s, 70s. I imagine them as like my age, 40, and they were so young and energetic and, like able to do so much stuff, and now they're not. And that is sad. That is sad. And I think of my grandparents the same way, right? Like I remember being a kid and them lifting me up and bopping me on their lap and all these things. And when they passed away, they were very fragile. So all this to say, I think despite the obvious physical deterioration, we as a as a family, revered our elders in a way that, like, we went to them for wisdom. We listened to them. When they spoke, the room quieted down.
Yeah.
It's like, he's speaking, you be quiet. We went to them for advice, literally, like, about anything, relationships, and they were very much trusted figures. So I think I like that about my heritage. And it's very odd that now I'm in this gay culture, which is the opposite. Like, we do the opposite of revere our elders. We put them in a corner and don't talk to them and don't listen to them and say, shush, you old man, you don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And they have so much to offer us. I did a relationship or intergenerational relationships episode with Dr. Hector Rodriguez. And I love that episode because we had talked about and intergenerational relationships, meaning not just romantic, but also platonic ones, like between young and older gays. And we have so much to learn from the older generations. And they survived a pandemic. They have fought for a lot of our rights that we stand on today and we take for granted. And they have lived through a lot. And they, unfortunately for me, there wasn't a lot of role models because of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. But I think that what I would love to see in the future is, and what I want to be a part of, is to switch that up and take up more space. And, you know, you might want to put us older guys in a corner and say that we're not worthy of being on your TikTok or your Instagram, but tough shit, we're here and we got something to say. And
Yeah.
yes, I realize that some people think I'm young and some people think I'm old. That's the beauty of being 40. So I think that that's definitely a piece that I want to make sure that we all do a better job of in the future, is not putting our older gays in the corner and shushing them away.
Totally.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a future I look forward to as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
There are a couple things that stand out to me about like where my ideas and beliefs about aging come from. And I have this like image, and one of them is Fame nightclub in Winnipeg, and the other is the interview. I would just say Oprah's studio where she has her conversations, and I'm pretty sure she was the one who interviewed Raquel Welch. Those two images kind of stand out for me as being really influential. Fame because it's where I experienced a lot of sort of the gay community, and there's a lot in my relationship to that space, like not seeing people who looked like me, or seeing young bodies and white bodies like glorified and sort of put at the forefront, and me really choosing to like disregard that and take up space and be there, despite that. And that was also a space where I had my first instance with like, oh my gosh, I'm aging. There was someone I had dated who was younger than me, and him and this other young Twinkie guy were like on stage, and they were dancing and doing their thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, that used to be me, and that's probably not anymore. So I was like, holy shit, okay. And I reconciled with it fairly quickly. But then coming to this interview with Raquel Welch, I listened to the interview, and I went to the library and I took out her book. And I'm like at this point, I think I was like in my early 20s. Like I don't know, it's probably like 21 or something. I went to the library and I took out this book by Raquel Welch, and it's called Beyond the Cleavage. And yeah, it was really beautiful to hear. I just found myself really inspired by like her agedness. And I think it's like strong, beautiful, aging women in a big way who've really inspired me and my views and my beliefs and the ways that I think about aging. Especially those who have chosen to really embrace it with a sort of grace. And that's something that I aspire to. So I tend to focus on those who are up to that, you know. Um, so yeah, I would say like essentially that's where a lot of my own ideas and beliefs about aging come from. And it's an ongoing journey, and it's an ongoing conversation. I feel like you know, today here we've just sort of touched on a really juicy, you know, deep topic, and I'm really excited to continue the conversation as well. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Michael. I'm curious, are there any parting thoughts or ideas that you want to share as we bring the conversation to a close?
I have one little quick thing that I want to share. And
Yeah.
you guys kind of brought this up, it stimulated this, but like, I think why there's such an attachment to youth is because aging represents death. We're moving closer towards death. And I think subconsciously people fear death. So we reject aging, right? We want to move away from it, right? There is this physical thing. Yes, we want to preserve our physicality, but I do think on a deeper level, there's this fear of death. And that's I think the root. If we're actually to go to the root of healing this, reconcile the fear of death, you'll reconcile the aging, right? So that just came through. So.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I guess some of these ways that we try to avoid death are like surface level ways, you know, it's like the Botox and the fillers and right? It's like we're evading the inevitable. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. And thank you, listeners. So to wrap up, you can join us in the private Facebook group, Gay Men's Brotherhood, to continue this conversation. You can also subscribe and leave us a review and comments on the conversation. Let us know what you thought about this conversation, what stood out to you. Maybe share one of your takeaways from the conversation or something you're digesting on and reflecting on. And you can also visit our website at gaymensbrotherhood.com for more information on the Gay Men's Brotherhood. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in the community. And thanks, gents.
Thanks, Reno.
Thank you.